my name is Sweetnam, and I'm based in the Southern Regional Waste Management Planning Office. So today I'm just going to give so first of all, just a brief summary of how we manage waste management planning in Ireland, and then just talk briefly about the local authority's role in household hazardous waste collection, and then how we collect the waste here in Ireland and our household hazardous waste collection days, which Inva would have spoken about at the last meeting. So just starting off, I suppose, just to explain, in terms of waste management planning, there's 31 local authorities in Ireland, and the 31 local authorities are divided into 3 waste regions. So we have the Connacht Ulster region, which is up here in the northwest. We have the Eastern Midlands, which is here in yellow, and the Southern region. So each region is supported by a regional waste management planning office, and I'm based in the Southern Regional Waste Management Planning Office. And the regional waste management planning offices, together we coordinate the implementation in terms of waste management planning on behalf of the local authorities in Ireland. And in 2024, we published our National Waste Management Plan for a Circular Economy on behalf of the local authorities in Ireland. So I suppose, what are the drivers for the local authorities in terms of collection of household hazardous waste? As we're all aware, obviously the Waste Framework Directive requires separate collection of household hazardous waste since the 1st of January last year. And I suppose in Ireland, the EPA have been tasked under the Waste Management Act to produce a National Hazardous Waste Management Plan. And they did that for a 6-year period from 2021. And within that, there's a number of recommendations covering areas such as policy and regulation, prevention, collection and treatment, and implementation. And each of the recommendations within the plan is assigned an owner who's responsible for it, whether that be the Department of Environment, the EPA, the local authorities, and the Regional Waste Management Planning Offices. We have a National Transportation Shipment Office. So there's a number of owners. And as I spoke earlier, back in 2024, the Regional Waste Management Planning Offices prepared the National Waste Management Plan for a Circular Economy on behalf of the local authorities in Ireland as to how local authorities would deal with waste management planning. And as part of that, there was a number of focus areas for different areas. 2 of them deal with hazardous waste. Focus Area 10, hazardous waste, and Focus Area 16 on the hazardous waste infrastructure. And they took the recommendations from the EPA National Waste Management Plan in terms of, promotion, in terms of the collection platforms. So I suppose, how do we collect household hazardous waste currently in Ireland? So currently in Ireland, each of the 31 local authorities would have a number of civic amenity sites which they control and manage. And most of those would accept a very limited range of household hazardous waste. Typically, they'd accept paint and waste oils and aerosols. And the cost for the householder, they're typically charged an entry fee into the site, and it ranges from about €5 to €10. And there's certain limits. Every local authority is operates on its own. The charges vary. Some may have limits, maybe for the amount of paint cans they can accept, and they may have a charge above a certain level and that kind of stuff. And I suppose in addition to these civic amenity sites, we also have, and I'll go into more detail, dedicated household hazardous waste collection days. And these days allow for a wide range of hazardous materials to be accepted. Prior to 2024, they were organised by the individual local authorities. So individual local authorities will get funding through the Department of the Environment to organise these days. They would go out, they tender for a collector, they tender for the communications assets. But I suppose with the onset of the requirement from January 2025, the department decided that probably a good idea maybe to do it centrally. And so since 2024, we've organised the household hazardous waste collection days in the various local authorities, and it's organised through the Regional Waste Management Planning Offices. And generally for these days, we've had no charge to date. So it's free to the customers when they come to these days. So I suppose just to explain the coordination model that we've been using. So the Department of Climate, Energy and the Environment, to give them their full title, in Ireland, they're responsible for the policy oversight, the implementation of the legislation, and they also provide funding. For this model, they provide funding to the Regional Waste Management Planning Offices. So we're ultimately responsible for coordination of the collection days across the country. the procurement of the external contractors, which you can see the external contractors are your hazardous waste collection service provider. We centrally procured for the communications asset and the public relations aspects of it as well. And then we're also responsible for coordinating the communication strategy. Well, we work with the individual local authorities across the country to identify suitable locations. Then the local authorities are responsible for the local promotion of the event through their own channels, and they also assist with the collection days. So we work very closely with the individual local authorities. So I suppose we started this in advance of the Waste Framework Directive requirement, and we ran a pilot to kind of test out this national coordination approach. So in 2024, we had 4 pilot events across our 3 waste regions. We had almost 1,900 customers that availed of the service. We collected 65 tonnes of waste, but 77% that was paint. We also, as a number of our events, we worked with the Paint Reuse Network here in Ireland, and they attended 3 of our events where they collected almost 2 tonnes of paint that went directly for reuse. And I suppose the cost then, it is very expensive. You're talking about 1,600 per tonne of waste that's collected these days, and it's about €73 per customer. And these are offered free of charge. So I suppose the key learnings from the pilot were there was a need for a coordinated national approach. There's a very strong demand for the service, and we found that particularly in urban areas where we ran the days, we came into a number of traffic management issues. And look, clear communication was critical to the participation, and all these learnings, they helped us to refine when we went to do the collections last year. So in 2025 last year, again, it was funded by the Department of Climate, Energy and the Environment. It was centrally coordinated as per the 2024 pilots. And this year, then we went out to procurement. We decided we'd procure the services for a 3-year term. Now, even though we only get funding on a yearly basis from the department, I suppose we were anticipating, because procurement, it's probably the same across, it takes a lot of time. We have to go to the tenders portal, we have to assess them with the waiting periods. So we decided that we'd go out for tender, and we tendered in such a way that it was for 2025 with the possibility of 2026 and 2027 subject to funding. So last year we organised 11 events across the 3 regions, and you can see there from the map of Ireland on the right, the locations were spread across the whole country. So I suppose one of the things that we did find from the pilot was, especially in urban areas, there was a huge demand, and we did find at a couple of events that the traffic management was a huge issue with cars. At one of our events, there was over 600 metres of cars queuing, we anticipated at one time. So I suppose from that we learned that in 2025 that we'd implement a booking system where we anticipated high demand, especially in large urban areas. So we used it for 4 of the 11 events last year. So what we did, we set up a booking system on Eventbrite where customers could go on, book a slot between a particular time, and that way then we were able to effectively manage the traffic, and it worked really well. I suppose it was a problem, obviously, people, because it's free, people book it and then they forget about it, or they just, so about 20% no shows. It also allowed customers to, we have a little survey as well, so allowed them to complete the survey when they're doing their booking. And I suppose we learned really from our very first event, we didn't make it very clear, or we didn't make it clear enough, that booking was essential. So that was really a key learning. That a lot of people turned up without a booking at our very first event that we had a booking, but we learned and successfully clearly advertising it. And you'll see it in the assets that I'll show there, and you can even see the little red circle there saying booking essential. But it did work very well after that. So then, just moving on to the communication assets, I suppose, as we say, they're key to informing the people about where the event is on, what can be accepted, what cannot be accepted. So you can see there from our right-hand side an example of the communication assets, like 1 day only to drop off your hazardous waste for free. And then here in the little circle saying booking essential, see below. Obviously the time, the date, the location, the air code. And then we have a list of materials that we'll accept, clearly listed out as we went to start from the pilot. Each day we learn as we go along. We've added to the list, amended to the list, and we've clear symbols down here at the bottom just to kind of say, okay, if your product has one of these symbols on it, then it's hazardous. And we have a little QR code then to scan so they can book their event, and some other conditions there about the limits in terms of the say the 10 paint can limit. So we did implement a 10 paint can limit because it's on these days, like the volume of paint is just unbelievable. Like, everybody comes with paint. So we implemented 10 paint can limit for the simple reason we don't want people coming, especially if they have a booking towards the end of the booking slot, and there's no saying, sorry, can't take your paint. So that's where we have to implement it, and we need to be strong on that as well on the day. We also found that a lot of people were bringing on motor oil, and I suppose, so we did put a limit of 25 litres of motor oil per customer as well on the day. People obviously would come sometimes with products without the labels on them. They cannot be accepted on the day. Invis is our contracted waste collector, so they would give them a card and contact them after the event to see how they can get rid of that waste. And it's obviously strictly limited to householders. And I suppose the communications assets that we use newspaper ads, posters and flyers, the radio ads, social media posts, press releases. And in 2025, it cost about just over €8,000 per event we spent on communication assets. And I suppose the main cost of that, I mean, it is very high, but it's newspapers. Putting ads in newspapers is extremely expensive. Radio ads are also quite expensive, but newspaper ads is the bulk of that kind of cost. And especially, I suppose, in some areas, there'd be maybe 2 or 3, say, local papers circulating where they want to put ads. Sorry. So this just shows different examples of our communication assets, from our posters, our flyers, our social media posts. And you can see that kind of the red stickers kind of highlighting the main events, kind of, one is closed for lunch kind of thing. And then just so newspaper articles. And there's been very good pickup on the newspaper articles, and we've got a number of radio interviews as well prior to the event. So there is great interest, there's great demand. And when you're on site at these days, the number of people that come up and go, oh, it was great. It was like, gosh, badly needed. I've been looking out for this service for years kind of thing. So there is huge demand. I suppose as part of the pilot and a part of the survey last year, we did a customer service just to get a feel. If people did a booking, it was the completed survey when they did their booking, or else if there was no booking, we surveyed as many customers as we could when they arrived on the site. And we asked them last year, how far have you travelled and where did you hear about the event? So I suppose just in terms of the 2025, you just see our survey here, 66% of the people travelled less than 10 kilometres. And I suppose that's because most of the events were held in urban areas. Like 26% travelled 10 to 20 kilometres. So people are travelling for these events, and I mean, 10% travelled greater than 20 kilometres. So there is like a huge demand. People are interested. People have, I suppose, hazardous waste built up on their sheds and that kind of stuff. We also asked where did they hear about the event, and you can see there. Sorry, social media was the largest one at 41%. It's the cheapest, but it really does show that it's, it is the main one, followed by our newspapers and our radio. And I suppose, like, the thing as well is, family and friends is huge as well. The amount of people that come and say, oh, I heard it from my friend or a friend group, or, that kind of thing. But like year on year, social media is the number one, and followed by the newspapers and the radio. So just moving on then to our 2025 days, what we found, as I said, we had 11 events. So there was 3,269 customers availed of the service. We collected 151 tons of hazardous waste. 80% of that was paint. So paint is huge. There was the Paint Reuse Network attended 3 events and collected 1.4 tons of waste this year. Now, I suppose the thing is, last year, obviously, we had 11 events across the country. Some of them were a bit more rural than others. So our customers per event, they range from 124 to 485. And we normally operated the events for a 4-hour period. So it just shows there's a huge range, and it kind of highlights the cost. Then the average cost then was much higher than last year. Now, obviously, the cost of the service provider had increased, but also I suppose the main reason was because of the huge range of customers. And you can see there that the average customer cost was €124 last year, but that ranged from 89 up to 225. So it really reflects the number of customers. So you do need to be getting a large number of customers to reduce your cost. And the average cost per tonne there was 2,690. So just in terms, look, that's just graphing the events there. So I can't really see, it's so small, but you can see the paint was our main thing, followed by waste oil. So yeah, paint is huge at these events. So just finally then for this year, again, we've been funded by the Department of Climate, Energy and the Environment. We have centrally coordinated, similar to the last 2 years. We've been up and running. It's a little bit faster. We're starting our first event actually this coming weekend, because we got notified of our funding just about a month or two ago. But then at least we have all our tenders. We have our hazardous waste collector. We have our communication assets all tendered for, so we can get going straight away. And I suppose this year, just slightly different. What we are trialing, and it's happening now in June, in 2 weeks' time, we're having a paint amnesty week at a civic community site in Carlow. So basically what will happen there is, and you can see the ad there, for 4 days, householders can bring waste paint, like it's a civic community site, so they can bring it during their opening hours, but it will be limited to 10 paint cans per customer, and it'll be free of charge. So we just want to see how that kind of idea works. We're doing it in a facility, a civic community site that has actually loads of space that can accommodate this kind of activity. We don't want to go to kind of a smaller area. So we'll just see how that goes. We're also kind of speaking to local authorities, and maybe because a lot of the local civic community sites accept hazardous waste as it is, and it's something when you're out there talking to the people to kind of realize that they didn't know that they could bring their paint to their local civic community site. So there's a lack of awareness there. So we're going to work with a couple of local authorities this year as well, and just based on communication assets to highlight, did you know you can bring your paint to or your waste oil? And also this year, we're also going to run a survey again this year, but we've revised the questions a little bit different this year. So we're going to ask them, did you know that your local, say, civic community site can accept the following hazardous waste, depending on where we're doing the collection? And then we're going to ask them, how do you typically dispose of your waste paint? Are they put it in the general waste bin? Are they put it in the recycling bin? Are they bring it to the civic community site, or are they storing it up in their garage? And so one question then we want to see is, like, do you think the hardware stores or shops that sell the paint should take back the waste paint? So it just gives us kind of different information, because I suppose how far you travelled and where you heard about the event, they yielded very similar results in 2024, 2025. So there's probably no need to keep going with the same questions. And so I suppose just finally, just to wrap up, I suppose what we learned, like what works well, is definitely the central coordination. It's saved a lot of time for the individual local authorities, reduces their workload when you have central procurement. We have a standardised communication approach, and we're mending it as we go along. There's clear communication is key, obviously, and it works well. When you clearly tell people they have to book, they will book. And then they have the limits on certain waste types. If we didn't have the limit on paint cans, we'd be closing these collection days within an hour or two of opening them. And that obviously leads to negative publicity and bad feeling and that kind of thing. So I suppose the challenges are identifying suitable locations to maximise participation. That's really what we saw last year when we ran 11 events. So this year's events, they are targeted in more urban areas. But saying that, we'd also think about how we work with the more rural areas, whether it's paint amnesty weeks or days or collection points as well. We have to look at all areas, can't just concentrate in the urban areas. Look, addressing waste paint is a huge challenge, because it's 80% of the waste that's collected. And obviously the cost, which is averaging out at about 124 euros per customer. So it's a huge burden on the state. And just finally, just to kind of, I suppose, plug what we have here, the Regional Waste Management Planning Offices have worked with local authorities and the department, obviously, to produce mywaste.ie. So it's Ireland's official guide to managing all our wastes. There's information there for householders, commercial premises, and that kind of stuff. We obviously advertise our household hazardous waste collection days there. It's actually very, very handy, say, particularly for radio ads. You can just say, go to mywaste.ie for more details of the collection day. It's prominent information available there. There's information about how you minimise your household hazardous waste, guides, greener cleaning guides, and that kind of stuff. So there's a whole range of information. People can go in there and they can search how they get rid of a particular waste type. They can put the item in there, and it'll tell them how to do it. So that's kind of where I'm at. So thank you very much for your time.